Life no go end in shame.
Amen, amen, amen. Timmy Dakolo, Bebodie. Now let's get the program started in earnest. Along with political and economic grievances, separatist agitations are driven by a strong feeling of collective victimization. Hear, hear. Some political analysts have noted that successive governments' responses have been generally intolerant and combative. They say the government generally lumps the Igbo separatist movement together with Boko Haram and the militant Yoruba group, the Odua People's Congress. Well, that's neither here nor there. We're going to look at all this and analyze all this and find out why there's so much agitation around the country. Many of them actually asking for separation. They don't want to be part of this marriage anymore. But of course, we always say that we are better together. We are stronger together. Are we going to be able to convince everybody to stay? Big question mark. Now, to help us analyze all this morning, I'd like to welcome to the studio a legal practitioner, Mr. Tony Dania.
Good morning.
Good morning,
viewers.
And joining us via Zoom from Ibadan is Emmanuel Remy Ayede, Head Department of Political Science, Professor of Political Institutions, Governance and Public Policy at the University of Ibadan. Good morning.
It's not loud.
Okay, I'm pretty sure that we'll get to that.
Okay, all right. Well, let us start with what we have right now. Mr. Dania.
Yes.
North, south, east, west. Agitation, agitation. Is the answer separation? Or is it just a call for social justice? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, we've been having agitations even before independence, when our nationalists agitated for independence. So that means we have a right to agitate. But when you start using violent means of agitating, it becomes an offense to the state. But right for agitation, we have a right to protest, we have a right to, hear our opinion. And the cause of agitation for separate states or sovereignties is because of injustice. And when some group are not satisfied with the way the center is handling matters, and when you are not also satisfied not only with the economic situation, the insecurity situation in the country is also amplifying the call to maintain separate state. But that is not the solution. I think the general cause of agitation for separate state is social, political, economic instabilities and perception of collective groups that they have been shortchanged in the management or sharing of activities in the country. And then the suspicion that the center is not treating people with criminal tendency with equal approach. So this led to some group coming up to say, look, we'll pull out of this marriage called Nigeria. So the solution is generic, but it has to start somewhere, somehow. The center, the power at the center is too much. Then most of the persons that would have joined in the call for a balanced situation in the country in protesting the seemingly tendency to favor certain group are benefiting from the rot in the system. And then I'm talking of people who are either, let us say they are elected because they went through an election, and then those who are appointed. And then the governors, the members of both state and national assemblies, the ministers. Almost all of them are interested in personal aggrandizement, personal profit with their cronies. Almost all of them are benefiting from the system the way it is. So when they come out to pay lip service, to protest, to balance the situation, inwardly they still cooperate and plan to subvert people who are also protesting.
Mr. Adele, is this anything to do with our laws? Is there a conflict of interest in the laws that makes these, gaping spaces so obvious?
Well, our constitution was forced on us by a military regime, and we've been working on that. I mean, that has been the constitution of the Federation, and that constitution vests so much power at the center. But beyond that, if you look at corruption, for instance, that most people are complaining about, it's generic. It's not tied to one particular agency or ministry. It's everywhere. Everywhere. Port, police, fire service is the one that you hear about, that you know about. There are so many you don't hear about, that you don't know about. But every part, there's serious corruption. And then how do you solve it? If you pick one, EFCC is overwhelmed. So, but if every minister, because if you are appointed, the tendency to please the person that appointed you is there. The Attorney General, for instance, he wants to impress the president. But if his appointment if his removal is constitutionalized, not at the, ease of the president, the same thing the Accountant General of the Federation, the same thing the Governor of Central Bank. So if you want to tackle this, it's generic. So if every minister wants to do his or her work very well, this will go to some extent to address issue. Because we all go to the president, he appoint people he believes can do this job. Why are we not talking about them? Then we also have the National Assembly. If you become a senator today, even the society want you to be a billionaire within a short time.
Let's take the discussion to Professor Ayede. I'm going to put the same question to you. Agitations everywhere for separation. Is it separation we should be talking about, or social justice?
I understand he's not ready for us now, so perhaps, because we had a little bit of issue earlier, so maybe that's what was still at play.
Okay. Can I take you up on one of the things you raised earlier?
Yes.
You said the center was too powerful.
Yes.
How do we go about reducing the power in the center?
Well, there is an ongoing constitutional amendment process, and a lot of regions are protesting. They don't want to participate. At the end of the day, an amendment is done. We still have a constitution. I've advised those who listened to participate in it. We need to deliberately diffuse the powers at the center and make the presidency, give the presidency or the central government lesser power. Let's run through federalism.
But Tony, we've been talking about this forever. Devolution of powers, devolution of powers. That has been our song.
Yes, but
yet nothing has happened.
Like I said, few persons who will even come out openly to say, yes, let's run through federalism. Back inside, they are benefiting from the system as it is. And they will make effort to, subvert the plans. So that is the problem we are having. The persons who are, for example, if those who are in authorities in the East did not cooperate, they won't arrest Nnamdi Kanu. If those in authorities in the West did not cooperate, that invasion of Ugbo's house wouldn't have been done. Because, let me tell you, when OPC started as a private agitative group,
Gani Adams.
Fashewu started it, Gani Adams joined, and he wanted to be, it was violent. Later, what happened? The traditional rulers and those in authorities in the West called him, they waded in, and the OPC became positive. In most streets in Lagos State, even across the country, you see OPC being employed as security operative. The aim of the OPC is what Ugbo is also doing. You see, why it will continue like this? Because those who can go into, who can make money easily, who can go into administration, as the ones that are encouraged by those who are already inside, who will say, we don't want this, is too strict. This man, if he comes in, he will expose us. So that dictate who comes into the government. Few persons. So the only way, and then the federal government should not toy with this. With respect to the late President Yaradua, he had an intention, a positive intention, to intervene in some areas. It's unfortunate that he died. Until we have such leaders, and by the way, a tree can't make a forest. If you have a good person as the president, good in quote, what about the governors? What about those he's going to appoint as ministers? What about the members of the State and National Assembly? So, how do we resolve this? Honestly, I think the solution is the body language of those in powers goes a long way. If, for instance, the president spoke recently on Arise, if he has been talking all this while, even if we quarreled with some of the things he said, it would have gone some ways.
Well, you know, you began by, I mean, from the question Alero asked you about true federalism.
Yes.
We have a federal system, and people are still calling for true federalism. So, is that saying that the federalism we have is false?
No. We are not practicing it the way it is practiced in other climes. America is a federation. And then you see that the states, they have their powers.
So the reason for not practicing federalism the way it ought to be practiced is what? The Constitution?
The Constitution.
Okay. Let's ask Professor Ayede. I understand that we have him yet now. So, Prof, to the question that Alero asked you before we took that break, do you agree, or rather, what's your take on the various pockets of agitation for independence, so to speak, all over the nation? Is it, to you, the answer, is it separation all the way they are asking for it, or necessarily a call for some social justice?
Well, I think the issue that is on the table is the issue of fairness in terms of how those in authority, especially at the federal level, and not only at the federal level, but at the state level, deal with Nigerian citizens, broadly speaking. And as you know, citizens often organize as groups, and it seems one of the salient groups has been the large ethnic groups, especially the major ethnic groups in the country, who think that they have sufficient clout to be able to stand alone as independent countries. But if you look closely at the issues at stake, you will find that whether we remain in Nigeria or we break into multiple countries, the issues will not go away. And the earlier we start addressing them as they are, rather than hoping that, that by breaking into smaller units, we'll find some small Eldorados where we can find expressions. I think injustice is a human problem, and the way to go about it is to fight for justice, is to demand for fairness, and to see how we can do that within the ambit of the law. If we talk about the structure of the federation as something that is unfair, federalism is such a system that enables every segment of the various units of the society of this country to be represented at the national level. So, and there are channels through which we can then direct these grievances. I think people have become impatient. People find it difficult to walk through institutions. They think that by taking the laws into their hands or looking for shortcuts, they can easily achieve their objectives. And that is one of the bane of institution building in Nigeria. So rather than put pressure on their representative in the National Assembly or in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, or those who are even ministers, to do the right thing, they are busy organizing outside the system and demanding for so-called self-determination. And we see a situation, even those who are leading the groups, their credentials are questionable, and we are not even sure the extent to which they can represent even the grievances that we are talking about. And when you look at what is happening around the country, even within these groups, it leaves a lot to be desired. It is even less hopeful if you look at what has happened in other countries in Africa where self-determination has happened. If you look at the Sudan, for instance, or you look at places where you have homogeneous communities like Somalia, you don't really think that self-determination demands is really the right way to go. I think we should fight for justice, we should fight for fairness, we should ask that the rule of law should observe, and then the principles of federal character, which has been stated in the Constitution, and other measures that are designed to improve inclusion within the government system should also be pursued, rather than this demand for self-determination.
Now, Prof, Tony here in the studio raised the issue of devolution of power. If power were indeed devolved and the states worked like they should work in a federation, do you think some of our problems would be solved through that?
Well, I think that we must distinguish between problems that are caused by federalism and those that are not. In Nigeria today, federalism has become the lapdog, what you blame for all vices and all problems of society. And many of these challenges that we face here are not even linked to the structure of the federation at all. But since it's politically correct to talk about, to blame everything on federalism and then claim that once we restructure, everything will be fine, people easily, join the bandwagon to blame federalism for everything. They talk about it if non-federal societies don't progress. There are societies that are unitary states and they are doing better than Nigeria. And if you talk about the federal system, we have a non-centralized system. It may not be a perfect federation, but it's difficult to argue that we are not a federation. Because as we speak, one of the fundamental things about the federation is that the federal government cannot abolish any state. And that the state has its own sphere of operation and authority, which the federal government cannot take away from it. And that's the minimum required of the federal system, and that's what we have. But we have all kinds of governance challenges. We talk about the abuse of the rule of law. That cannot be attributed to federalism. We are unlucky to have leaders at the national level and many state level who don't believe in the public interest, who don't act in the public interest, who abuse power, who don't even understand what political power is supposed to be used for. There's a lot of self-aggrandizement going on around the country, and there's really little concern, for the condition of ordinary citizens, especially those who are disadvantaged and dispossessed. So if we don't bring all of these issues to the table and find ways of means of ensuring inclusion and addressing the problem of poverty, then we will not be really touching the issues at all. I think most of the agitation for federal restructuring, if they are properly channeled, would have achieved a greater measure of transformation that we have recorded since 1999. And where the issues affect the elites directly, you see they have actually amended the Constitution, they made some changes in the rules. But when it comes to issues that directly would address poverty, would want and jobs, they are a little hesitant. And that's the crux of the matter.
And that's why just one moment, Prof. Prof, there was something that you said earlier, and I'm just curious. If the laws already make it clear that we have a federation, just as you said, the Constitution is clear about that, the principles of federation are enshrined in the Constitution as is. It sounds like you are saying essentially that our main problem is not the Constitution. Is that correct?
As far back as the Political Bureau of 1987, they made that point very clear, that the problem is not with the Constitution, is the operators of the Constitution. Okay. Now, let me make this point clear. In many federal systems, there's always the question, should we change the rules or should we change the players? That tells you that there's always some dilemma between what is wrong with the law or what is wrong with the operators of the law. Now, you don't even know what the law says until you test it in the courts. And that's why in May, when we started from 1999, a lot of issues were taken for granted. For instance, the power of the federal government or the president to usurp the allocation to local government. Until the law said, no, the president has no such powers. There's also the issue of removing the debts or the servicing of debt for states directly for the federation account without reverting to the state. The court also said that the federal government has no such powers.
Okay, so
we need to look at this.
Yeah, so if that is the fact, it is clear in print, as we say, in black and white. And you have also said that if it's not a problem of the laws, then it's a problem of the players. We don't change the game, we change the players. But the same constitution, so many people believe, makes it very difficult to change the players.
You know, federal constitutions are rigid. When I say the constitution that makes it difficult to change the player, that is even in fact arguable. Because if you look at the nature of politics itself, there's always this challenge of how do you demonetize politics. And it's not a thing peculiar to Nigeria. It's just that those who have access tend to do everything they can to hold on to it. And those who don't have access have to fight, you know, to get a space within to operate. And that's why within the political system, we have civil society organizations, we have all of these groups that should agitate for inclusion. But inclusion is not the same thing as self-determination, saying we should break the country. And I think that's actually the problem we have in this country, that anytime we have a grievance, the first thing we do is to say, let us, you know, dissolve the country. We have similar problems in the United States. And you saw what happened on January 6th, when people in the United States started behaving as if they are in third world countries, going into the Capitol Hill. Would you say that what has happened there is because of the Constitution of the United States? Nobody has said, let us go and change the Constitution of the United States because people went to the National Assembly, the Congress. This Constitution is not working. I think we should deal with issues as they arise and find ways of means of putting them on the table until they are addressed, rather than at every point in time we talk about renegotiating the union, we talk about, you know, dissolving the country. I think that's some measure of irresponsibility, even on the part of those of us who are not in government.
Okay. Well, Mr. Daniel, you want to say?
Yes, I want to say something. I agree to some extent with what Professor have said, but you see, majority of Nigerians are not happy. Majority of Nigerians want Nigeria to be united. Majority of Nigerians want Nigeria to be great. Personally, I have hope that Nigeria will be great. One way or the other, this issue will be resolved. And then Nigerians are hardworking persons. Nigerians are not difficult to govern. I take you back to this analogy when we had Ebola. We were able to manage Ebola by ourselves. Orientation, mass orientation. That means if we want to do it right, we can do it very well. The moment we have a generic reorientation, things will work out. Now, the structure, we have three-tier government. We have the central, the state, and the local government. Are you telling me that they are working the way they are supposed to work? We are all aware. The problem is that there are issues going on. Only few come out to speak. A lot of people are afraid to speak.
Some blame for the third tier that you talked about. Some blame the Constitution. Some say that the Constitution makes the local governments like an appendage, like some administrative offices of the state.
You are correct on that. But quickly, let me say that when he said you can only know what the law says except you go to court. With respect, sir, it's not correct. You go to court when there's a dispute. When you said, no, this is not what it said, this is what it said, that's why you go to court. But generally, we know what it says. So many disputes don't go to court because people will agree, yes, that's correct, that's what it says, let's do it. It's only when there's a disagreement and there's a dispute. So now, we remember what the president said about the local government when he said he's aware. We have been aware of that for a long time. Who is not aware that the states have pocketed the local government administration? Now, in a true federalism, the local government is a government, look at the name, local government, state government, federal government. It's supposed to be a jurisdiction of its own. But what happened? The local government chairman keeps running to the state headquarters to take instruction from the state.
Is it to take instruction or to do what the Constitution says? Because
No,
they have a state joint local government account.
That is wrong. The local government is supposed to have its own account.
Yes, but the Constitution makes that clear.
Exactly.
Okay.
So Prof is right to some extent that the people, but like I said, the people in government would deliberately want to subvert positive changes or compliance totally with the Constitution.
My apologies. I really want this, to be useful for many of us that are listening, for many people that are listening to you right now. So, if that is the problem, it's like the Constitution is the game now. But then there are those who play the game of the Constitution. Now, is it the fault of the Constitution? I'm asking you the same question I asked Prof. Or the fault of the players of the game?
The two. The Constitution itself, we cannot run away from it, need amendment. The Constitution places so much power on the central government. Everybody is aware of this. That has to be addressed. That is one. Two, I have said this before, that the people, the problem we have, and with respect, I want to start blaming those we praise as nationalists. They went abroad, they are aware of the development there. We had money. People plan ahead. You plan for 100 years. Do we have that plan? We had money. If we would have been having regular lights, like Germany and the rest. Look at countries that when we had independence had serious issues. They have gone ahead, advanced beyond the position we are. So they didn't plan.
But there were plans.
The plan is you went abroad, you saw metro line. When did we start introducing metro line here? You went abroad, you saw regular light.
In the Second Republic in Lagos.
Sorry, sir. Sorry.
I'm just trying to make these, really practical. You remember that in the Second Republic, there was that thinking by the government of Lagos State, at least.
Yes.
To have a metro line
There
system.
was a plan.
There is a plan.
They even started to
execute some of it.
To execute it, yes.
I'm only mentioning that as one of so many things that they are supposed to have done.
The point I'm trying to raise, Mr. Daniel, is there are plans. For instance, there is a plan to eliminate malaria in Nigeria since 1948.
Yes.
There's no
So there are plans.
So this comes back to what I've said, that people in government, people in authorities, they deliberately take steps to subvert this plan because of personal aggrandizement. So until there's reorientation, which goes back to what the Prof have said, that we the people, we need to, be reorientated so that we think of national development. Many Nigerians don't have that. But it's easy if even 50%, for example, if there's regular light in Nigeria, which will not take much. But if you look at it from the historical plan on developing this, providing light, you will see that it is being deliberately, sabotaged. If they will have regular light, if the education system is planned such that you have no choice, you must do primary school. Then if you notice that you have flair for technical activities, you go for technical training. Do we have that? You see a lot of dropout education. Then military. At a time, Nigeria was one of the best in infantry in the world. How did we develop it? China too was one of the best, but they developed. Look at Americans came to Nigeria to trace an American that was kidnapped. They were able to zero in. What does it take? Technology. Why can't we get there? Where is the plan? So what I'm saying is that if we had this plan, because we keep blaming the administration, the head of the administration, we've forgotten that government is static. Government remains. It is people that come in to navigate or administer governments or governance.
Okay. Professor, let me take you back to what Tony had talked about earlier in his submission about the local government. Ayo had raised the issue that the local government is more or less an appendage of the state government. If monies for the local government, bearing in mind that the local government is the government that is nearest to the people, and is therefore supposed to have more impact on the lives of the people. If the local governments were getting their funds directly, I know that this has been tested in court and it had been ruled that the monies should go directly to them. Has there been any change in the workings of the local government since then? Prof, you'll get a chance to respond to that after this break.
Well, I think we're here now. Prof, the question, I don't know why. We were having a conversation about how strong the local government system was in the Third Republic. But, you know, going to that conversation, Prof, about what the Constitution says and how it should be activated, especially concerning the local government system. If the local government had first-line charge directly to their accounts, how significant would that be in stemming the tide of these separatist agitations?
Well, it will not be significant. That's not to say that I'm opposed to giving revenue directly to local government. It's just to show that we have done it before and we saw the consequences. And that's where we should take lessons from. And the situation in Nigeria should not always be reviewed in terms of either or. And I think that's 1999 to 2007, monies were given directly to local governments. It didn't make them more accountable to the local population. What it simply did was to empower local government to begin to organize, to relate directly to the National Assembly rather than the state government. That's why the state government became very, very upset with local government and tried whatever was within their means to take over control of local government. And what the means which they were able to do that was through the local government joint account. They went to court, and the court said that they had power, that the revenue for local government should not go directly to them. It's the Constitution provided for the state joint local government account. And that's where the problem that we currently face is resting. If you look at when local government received allocation directly, they went to National Assembly to extend their tenure from 2 years to 3 years. They had this very powerful outcome that were mobilizing resources contrary to what the ordinary people in their localities wanted them to do. So we need to look at that very carefully when we are talking about making local government grassroots government. And secondly, if you look at the federal constitutions across the world, local governments are never uniform across the country. And local government are supposed to be organized according to existing communities, natural communities, if you want to use that word. So that if you have large cities, you have municipal government. If you have small settlements, you have things like counties. So in many countries, we have multiple local government. In fact, the only place where you can find local government recognized as the third tier of government, apart from Nigeria, is probably Brazil. And even in Brazil, it's not organized the way we have organized our local government. So really, there's need for a much more radical change in the way local government is perceived in Nigeria today, rather than and we cannot also do that without talking to the state government, because it is the state government who want local government to be what they are today as prostrate government. So we need to, in order to strengthen them, we need to talk to the governors so they know exactly what the challenges that we are facing with security and the way local governments should be reorganized to achieve that. And one of the means, of course, will involve probably the amendment of the Constitution in a number of ways so that local government can be free.
Okay.
Whether that freedom, of course, will have to be defined.
Okay. Well, so, Mr. Daniel, as we wrap this up now, the separatist agitations are not just going to go away unless they are addressed.
Yes.
How do you suggest that this be addressed? Who should be doing what? You talked about the collaboration of state governors in some regions with security agencies at the federal level. So what should be done by whom to stem the tide of these separatist agitations and have a more inclusive Federal Republic of Nigeria?
Separatists agitation is caused by general injustice in the country. And then when there is injustice, there are methods we already know of addressing injustice. But the problem we have is that those in charge of redressing issues raised are not helping matters because they belong to the system. That is the problem. And that is why you see recourse to other methods of protesting against injustice. For instance, jungle justice, which is wrong, agitation. And then the agitators now resorted to using violence. We saw the violence in the south, in the east. We saw the one, the mass protest. And then, like Prof said, the persons leading these groups are also questionable. For example, the east, that is made of qualified person, highly important person, persons we respect, intelligent person, industrious persons, and you say it's Kano that will lead them. And then you talk of the Southwest, where you have technocrats. Prof is there, and you say it's Ubo that will lead them. But because the system is such that addressing it properly, Gani Fahimi has been fighting for justice. A lot of other persons have been doing it. Falana is on it too. We've been talking. If we talk and nothing is done, we are back to square one. Look at NSAS. It's a spontaneous, reaction to accumulated anger. You understand? So, to avoid all this, one, the office of the Attorney General, for example, there are so many solutions. We are just suggesting this. The removal should be constitutionalized and it should be separated, Attorney General Minister. Then, Accountant General, Governor of Central Bank. The local government, and you see the federal government and the state government usually select the judgments that they want to obey. That is very wrong. When there is a judgment, obey it. With that, you are helping addressing injustice. Okay. Insecurity. Do you know that when the president spoke, like I said, the last interview, to some extent, there was some level of calmness in the East. If he has been coming out like this, the logistics you will put into checkmating security will be reduced. So insecurity should be addressed, economic development should be addressed, political development, the constitution I think should be amended, then elections, the process of electing persons to represent us should be addressed such that you don't keep bringing back the same set of persons and you keep complaining about them. So if elections remains as expensive as it is, we will continue to have a recycling of the same persons. Yeah. So I call on the federal government still, it is still the federal government to encourage, because you see, it is those in charge of government should stop looking at the immediate benefit of whatever they do now.
Okay. Mr. Tony Daniel, a legal practitioner who joined us in our studio in Lagos, and we had the head of Department of Political Science and Professor of Political Institutions, Governance and Public Policy, University of Ibadan, Professor Emmanuel Remi Ayede, who joined us virtually. Thank you very much for coming to share your insight with us this morning. Sunrise will return in just a moment with another interesting conversation. Make sure you stay with us.